From the time I was a child, I was taught that the world had a creator and that this creator cared about me personally. Sunday mornings were spent in church, listening to stories of miracles, commandments, and divine love. At the time, I didn't question any of it. Most people around me believed the same things. It was just part of life. But over time, I started asking questions. And not just the ones you can brush aside with "have faith." I asked questions that seemed to make people uncomfortable, questions that had no real answers. That was the beginning of a very long, difficult, but liberating journey. This video is not about hating Christians. It's not about mocking religion or being edgy. It's about understanding why, after years of thinking, reading, living, and questioning, I came to a point where I could no longer call myself a Christian. The first thing that really shook me was the idea of hell, a place of eternal punishment. According to traditional Christian doctrine, someone could live a decent, kind life, help others, be generous, love their family, but if they didn't believe in Jesus, they would go to hell. That didn't sit right with me. I started wondering, what kind of being would create a system where eternal torture is the consequence for disbelief, especially when disbelief often comes from honest doubt? Think about this. There are around 8 billion people in the world. Over 2/3 are not Christian. Most of them were born into other religions or no religion at all. Are we really saying they're all wrong and deserve eternal punishment because of the family or culture they were born into? That doesn't sound just, it doesn't sound merciful, and it definitely doesn't sound like the work of an all-loving God. Then there was the Bible itself. I used to think it was a perfect book, but once I started reading it closely, not just the parts highlighted in Sunday school, I saw things that bothered me. The Bible contains violence, slavery, sexism, and commands to kill. In the Old Testament, God orders entire cities to be destroyed, including women and children. These were not metaphors. They were described as divine command. I heard people say that was a different time. But if we're talking about a God who is perfect, timeless, and morally flawless, why would he ever endorse slavery or genocide? If we say we don't follow those parts anymore, doesn't that mean we're judging them by a higher moral standard, one that we as humans have developed over time? Science was another turning point. I started reading about the origins of the universe, evolution, and neuroscience. The more I learned, the less I needed supernatural explanations. We used to think diseases were punishments from gods. Now we know about bacteria, viruses, and genetics. We used to think mental illness was demonic possession. Now we study the brain. The gaps that God once filled are getting smaller, not because people hate God, but because we've learned more about how the world actually works. In the Christian tradition, humans are said to be broken by sin and in need of salvation. That can be a powerful story, but it can also be deeply damaging. When you're told from birth that you're inherently bad, that you need saving, that you're nothing without God, that can affect your self-worth. I saw people around me struggle with guilt and fear, not because they did something wrong, but because they were simply human. I don't think that's healthy. Moral behavior doesn't come from religion. It comes from empathy, experience, and understanding. There are Christians who do amazing things, but so do atheists, Muslims, Jews, Buddhists, and people with no religion at all. Morality isn't owned by any one group. It's something we've developed together as a species. Religion may have helped guide that process at certain times in history, but it's not the source of right and wrong. Another issue I had was the idea of prayer. I prayed for years, for guidance, for healing, for help. Sometimes things worked out, sometimes they didn't. Over time, I realized that prayer didn't seem to change outcomes. What helped most were actions, therapy, support from friends, hard decisions. The idea that a divine being would intervene in some prayers but ignore others started to feel arbitrary, especially when people would say God answered my prayer because they found a job, while others were burying their children. I've also seen how religion can be used to divide. Christians themselves are deeply divided. There are over 45,000 Christian denominations. They don't agree on theology, interpretation, or even basic doctrine. Some support science, others reject it. Some accept LGBTQ+ people, others condemn them. If this truth came from a single divine source, why so much confusion? Why so many contradictions? The political influence of Christianity also played a role in my questioning. In many countries, including my own, Christianity is deeply tied to government policy, often in ways that harm others. Laws about women's rights, LGBTQ+ rights, and education are often shaped by religious beliefs that not everyone shares. That doesn't seem right in a pluralistic society. Beliefs should be personal, but when they shape public policy, they affect everyone, including those who don't agree. And then there's the issue of evidence. If something extraordinary is claimed, like the resurrection of a man or the creation of the world by a personal God, it should have extraordinary evidence. Christianity, like other religions, relies on ancient texts, personal experiences, and tradition. But personal experience can be incredibly misleading. People have religious visions across all faiths. A Hindu may see Vishnu, a Muslim may feel the presence of Allah, a Christian sees Jesus. That tells me more about human psychology and cultural conditioning than it does about divine truth. I've read the arguments from Christian apologists. Some are smart and articulate, but even the best arguments ultimately require a leap of faith. And if you need faith to believe something, it means you don't have enough evidence to be sure. We don't use faith in medicine, in engineering, or in law. Why should it be enough for the most important claims about reality? Many people fear leaving Christianity because they think life will be empty without it. That was one of my biggest fears too. But the opposite happened. When I stopped believing in heaven, I started appreciating life more. When I stopped thinking someone else had a plan for me, I started making my own. When I stopped believing I was being watched or judged by an invisible being, I felt more free to be myself. Life is short. We don't know what comes after. Maybe nothing. That makes this life even more valuable. Every moment, every connection, every act of kindness, it all matters more when you realize it might be the only shot we get. There's also something beautiful about not having all the answers. Christianity claims to have answers for everything. Where we came from, why we suffer, what happens after we die. But those answers are often simplistic or unverifiable. There's value in uncertainty, in exploring, in questioning, in learning. Saying, "I don't know," can be more honest than pretending to know through faith. I've seen people say, "Without religion, you'll feel lost." Maybe for a little while, but being lost isn't always bad. Sometimes it means you're free to find your own path, and that path might be more meaningful because you chose it. The human mind is wired for patterns. We want meaning, we want stories. Religion offers those things, but we can create our own meaning. We don't need to be told what to believe or who we are. We can build values based on compassion, curiosity, and honesty. I don't think Christians are stupid or naive. I know what it's like to believe. I know how comforting it can be. I also know how hard it is to let go. But the world is still full of wonder without religion. In fact, I'd argue it's more wondrous because it's real. The stars are not lanterns hung by angels. They are massive nuclear furnaces billions of miles away, and we are made of the same elements. That's not less meaningful, it's more. I didn't leave Christianity because I wanted to sin. I didn't leave because I was angry. I left because I was looking for truth, and the answers I found in science, philosophy, and real life were more convincing, more grounded, and more useful than the ones I was given in church. Some people need religion, and that's okay, but I don't. I've found peace, meaning, and purpose outside of it. And that's why I'm not a Christian. Thanks for listening.